How's it going, everyone? My name is True Underdog, and it looks like Terminator is already scaring people online.
Why you bullying me?
So much so that some players are already asking this character to be nerfed, and some going so far as to say he's top tier and possibly broken, as in overpowered.
That's a lot of damage!
Now, do I think that's the case personally? No, probably not. However, I do want to outline why I think this character is very, very good, and quite possibly the best DLC character to come out so far. And at the same time, I also want to discuss why many players are having a tough time fighting him. But first, a shout out to our ally in the fight against demonetization. Ever since I was a little kid growing up, I've had a soft spot for multiplayer RPGs, and Raid Shadow Legends is easily one of my favorites. With great graphics and over 10 million players joining in less than 6 months, you'll find friends to play with in no time. Check out the amazing graphics and details on those champions, and you have the ability to personally customize and choose the artifacts and design a unique mastery build for each of them. Once again, I have a soft spot for games like this, but you don't just have to take my word for it. This game has over 300,000 reviews and nearly a perfect score on the Play Store. The game is growing super fast, and the highly anticipated new Faction Wars feature is now live. And best of all, the game now has a rewards program for new players, which means you can earn new login rewards every single day for the first 90 days that you're playing. So there's definitely never been a better time to try this game out. So check out my video description for the special links to receive 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program and start your journey. Good luck, and you'll likely even see me playing. Alright, so without any further ado, let's get started. Let's begin by talking about the stuff that makes Terminator very tough to deal with, especially online. So to begin, we have 50-50s. Terminator does have legitimate 50-50s, even in variation 1, which is his best combo variation. He still has ridiculous mix-ups. So we have a low, and then an overhead. Already that's pretty tough to block. But if you do start blocking it, I can just do low, low. And some characters like Sub-Zero, you can do what's called fuzzy guarding, because the overhead is a bit slower than the low. However, check this out. That overhead is 20 frames on startup, whereas this low, 22. So in other words, there is no fuzzy guarding that. It's the same timing no matter what. It's going to be very tough to block. So in other words, you basically do have to guess. Now thankfully, if you do block the first attack, you can interrupt this second overhead. However, you cannot interrupt this move right here. There's no gap there, and if you go for it, I actually get a crushing blow, which is very scary. Now if you want my honest advice, one good way to avoid this early on is to just always start punishing the player. If they go for this early on, chances are you do have 2 bars, you just drop out of the combo. It's not nearly as scary as Liu Kang, who gets flat out damaged. The crushing blow itself doesn't hurt very much, and all the opponent gets afterwards is an uppercut before you drop out. And then once that crushing blow is gone, you can start challenging every follow-up because all they have is this, and look how far away you're knocked. You do have a little bit of breathing room. Now you are at minus 27, so he could dash up and all that, but it's a lot better than being caught by a full combo. So I do recommend just trying to challenge it early on. If he hits you with the crushing blow, and you have the meter just drop right out, and from then on, you can interrupt every option he has except for this, and the damage isn't that bad. Now with that said, that's not the only mix-up that Arnold has. No, unfortunately not. He has a low combo starter, and also this overhead. And in certain variations, this overhead combos too, and look at that startup, 18 frames. This low, 19 frames. So unlike Sub-Zero and other mix-up characters, there is no fuzzy guarding this. The timing is the exact same, or so close in other words, you can't possibly time it. There is no muscle memory here. Once again, you have to guess. Not to mention the follow-up is an unblockable throw. Now you can duck this, but since the first hit is an overhead, you have to duck immediately after blocking high. That's going to be tough online, especially in a bad connection. And once again, I have the low, I even have an overhead in this build, so I could do this and catch you crouching, and that combos, so not much risk to me, honestly. So as crazy as it might sound, I think Terminator has more 50-50s than any other character in the game so far, especially when it comes to getting a full combo off of each of them. So that's issue number 1 of why Terminator is so frightening online especially. He has 50-50s that lead to full combos, and not just one, but a bunch. This first hit is a 50-50. Overhead or low, they can both combo. This second hit is a 50-50, overhead or low, and there's no fuzzy guarding. The low does not lead to a full combo, but it's still a mix-up all the same. And you can say the same thing for this overhead. It could be overhead and then you duck, but I could change it up and go for the overhead. Overhead, overhead, and I get the knockdown. If I want to spin the bar, I can do that too. And get some pretty decent damage. There goes 21%, pretty scary stuff. So now let's talk about issue number 2. the frame data. So Terminator has what I call Cabal Syndrome. Though it's not a bad thing, it's actually a perk. Every string this guy has is either unpunishable or so tough to punish that it's just never going to happen realistically. So for example, Unstoppable Machine is -8, so you'd think you might be able to punish it, but the pushback is so much on block that the punish is not going to happen anyway. And this move once again does lead to a crushing blow after you block the first hit, so there's no risk and a ton of reward if you land this thing. So if you're fighting a Terminator player online, you have to pray they overcommit to a special move, because that's the only way you're punishing him, and even then, a lot of these special moves are also safe on block as well. So let's check out this overhead. -6. So that was a mix-up, and you can't punish me for it. It's not going to happen. I could even go low into overhead. You're still not punishing me. This low? Okay, -18. That's punishable, thank goodness. But if I want to be extra safe, I just never go for that low hitting special move, because this mix-up is still safe, only -7 despite being a low overhead. And then this move, once again, -8, and so much pushback, you're not punishing me. So while some characters with crazy 50-50s are very punishable if you guess correctly, characters like Sub-Zero for example, that's not the case for the Terminator. He is safe either way. He gets the full combo or he's safe on block regardless. And I think that's one more reason a lot of players think he's a bit overpowered. Because even if they do have the defense of a god and do everything correctly, they don't get a reward. They just avoid the combo and that's about it, but they can't punish Arnold for doing something risky. And for reason number 3, we have damage. A very simple thing, but so are his combos. Very simple, and you still get a lot of damage for him. Look at that, 37%, mid-screen, only 1 bar, and it came after a huge mix-up. Typically combos like that require a punish. Characters like Noob Saibot, you gotta do something unsafe so they can get a full combo on you. No mix-ups lead to that much damage, and even Sonya Blade at this point can't get that much damage most of the time outside of the corner. And even characters like Garrus still require a crushing blow to get crazy damage like that. But not Terminator, this guy can just sneeze and get a really good combo. Now of course this is only in variation 1, whereas mix-ups are actually the weakest, believe it or not, but his combos are still very good and he still has a command grab, which I didn't even mention in the mix-up portion. He has an unblockable command grab, which he can do to either trick you after a down 1 or a down 3, or after certain strings he just goes into it. Very, very scary stuff, so you're not only blocking this overhead throw, and this low overhead, or this low low, or this overhead, you're not just blocking all of that, but also this command grab, which in variation 2, every time he lands it, gets closer and closer to a crushing blow, which then leads to his most damaging combo, which is easily over 40%. So despite having fantastic mix-ups like Sub-Zero, he doesn't have the lower damage like Sub-Zero. Instead, he makes you hurt every single time just for touching you. And in some variations like 2 and 3, he doesn't even need to go for the mix-up. His regular punishes also lead to a full combo as well, and that's very frightening. So while other 50-50 characters have a bit of a damage reduction to make them feel a bit more fair, Terminator does not have that. He has crazy mix-ups and they also hurt very, very bad. And now it's time to get a little bit more specific. So Terminator is actually a lot faster than people give him credit for. So his down 1, 6 frames. Very few characters have this, and you may not understand why it's a very big deal, but a lot of characters have strings that are -7, and that should be safe for the most part. But against characters like the Terminator, he can not only punish you, but he steals his turn back. So he's not just getting his turn, but he's getting some damage and way more frame advantage. Look at that, plus 12 on hit. I've heard some people say that he's a bit slow. And you're right, 19 frames is slow, but let's do the math. I'm plus 12 on hit, and this move is 19 frames, which means a 7 frame gap. Unless you have a down 1 that's 6 frames, you can't interrupt me for doing that, and even if you want to, I can just do down 3. It's only a little bit slower and it's plus 15, which means there's no longer a gap. You have to block this mix-up, and as we discussed earlier, it's not just one mix-up, it's like 15 different mix-ups, a couple of which lead to full combos that hurt quite a lot. So honestly, the only thing slow about the Terminator is his shotgun, and that's about it. It's a pretty standard projectile. Nothing super great about this unless you're up close. If you land it at close range, it can be some pretty nice meterless damage. You keep walking forward, 24% unbreakable. That's not very scary when you have full health, but if you're low on health and you can't escape, that's quite frightening. It can be very scary. Now, it's not a very fast projectile. The startup, 31 frames. That is twice as slow as most characters' projectiles, but at the same time, he can just negate zoning entirely. He can just do this and absorb your projectiles. I'm still holding it down, so there's no way you're mistiming this thing as long as you do it early. it's really good for negating zoning, so you could just get your life lead, and then zoning becomes irrelevant against the majority of the characters, outside of some who have projectiles and teleports. That can make them a bit scarier because they bait this and then teleport on you, but that's still a bit more meta. The point is, for the most part, Terminator is not slow. He's actually quite fast, once again having the fastest down one in the game, actually at this point the fastest move in the game. Nothing is faster than 6 frames, and on top of that, he can get really good frame advantage that leads to these mix-ups on hit. So he's still very scary, especially up close. From a distance, he's not the best, and that may be his only weakness. I think they were smart to not give him his teleport. Even though it looks really cool and I would love using it in ranked, it does seem a bit unfair even at tournaments, because then he would really have no weaknesses. He could just get around everything. Now with that said, he does still have this in variation 1, which is still very fast. Look how quickly this thing travels, right? This can counter zoning pretty well too, but it's not a guaranteed way in, so in terms of counter zoning, he's not the best. All he can really do is survive it. He doesn't actually make you hurt for throwing projectiles. So in that one regard, he is a bit slow and maybe a bit lacking, but when it comes to being up close, he's much faster than you think. And last but not least, I want to talk about variation 3. Now, I discussed in my breakdown video how excited I was for this move, the Incapacitator. But my goodness, is it really good. I had no clue it was unblockable. This thing right here is so frightening. So the idea is, you end combos with this, and the opponent can't do anything on wake up. They have no wake up 3, no wake up 2, not even a roll. So if they're cornered especially, it's very scary. This is awesome because it doesn't even last super long, which may sound like a good thing, but all it really means is you can do another combo and end with it again. And if you play him correctly and are doing really good with these absurd mix-ups, and in this build they're even better by the way, because his overhead, it leads to a full combo now. Not just a short combo, leads to a full thing. So he's even scarier in this build in terms of mix-ups, and he denies your only option of escaping, which is either rolling or an invincible wake-up attack to break up his offense. You have neither one in this build if the opponent's playing him correctly in variation 3. So his mix-ups are arguably scarier, and while his combo damage does take a bit of a dip and doesn't hurt quite as much, you now have no way of escaping his offense, and his mix-ups are arguably better because his overheads now lead to full combos. And don't get me wrong, I love the idea of just making this game no longer meta combat, because now the opponent has to actually block you. But when you have a character with so many mix-ups, and so many ways to convert off of these mix-ups, and the mix-ups are also safe, and you now have to deal with all that because you can't even do some universal moves that every character normally has, that does seem like a little bit too much, and I do agree with most players in that regard. I think he is a bit too strong in some ways, and that's one of them. Maybe not make this move unblockable, it's just a bit too tough to deal with. So in summary, do I think that Terminator is broken or overpowered? No, I certainly don't. But do I think he could be tweaked in some ways and that would make the game a bit more fun? Yes, I certainly do agree in that regard. I think that maybe his damage is a bit too strong in variation 1, maybe his mix-up should be timed a little bit differently so fuzzy guarding could be effective. I actually don't mind the startup of his moves. I think they're pretty fair and pretty consistent. They're slow in the neutral, but after landing a hit, they're frame traps. I don't mind it in that regard. This move being unblockable though, combined with all those mix-ups, and the mix-ups also being almost impossible to fuzzy guard, does seem like a little bit much. But please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think Terminator is overpowered, or do you think players are overreacting a little bit too soon? Please let me know down below, and then while you're down there, go ahead and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. It really does help my channel out a ton. And finally, why not keep that combo going by subscribing and ringing that bell? That way you never miss a future video. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdog.